So once again, I'm very happy to welcome everyone. I'm very happy to have Vishy with me here, and I better stop talking, giving the floor to the world champion. You know, in other sports, when you, let's say, you play the world championship match and you keep the title, for instance, they call it 2 times world champion, 3 times world champion, right? And then we might as well consider like blitz titles, rapid titles. I was wondering how many times Vishy Anand is actually the world champion. So it must be like 6, 7 times.
Okay, if you mean official, then of course I played in what was called the World Blitz Championship in Warsaw 2000. So not these WRBs like we know them today, but the World Blitz Championship in Warsaw. I also won the World Rapid Championship in Kapdag in 2003. These were slightly improvised, but at least I had the sense that the world called them the World Championship, and FIDE recognized it. Besides that, Hans-Walter Schmidt had the Mainz Chess Classic, which in some ways could be considered a kind of unofficial world championship, because it was not announced as such by FIDE, but you had a very big rapid open and people could qualify to play me, and so there was a bit of that. And I also did very well in the Amber tournaments, but they were not world championships. And so if you add these two, then Riyadh in 2017, the World Rapid. Yeah. And then I'll tell you, I was knockout in Delhi, 2000, then tournament in Mexico, 2007. And then I defended it, Kramnik, Topolov, Gelman. Yes. So 5 plus 3 would be 8. That's as official as I know it is.
Yeah, so that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. So once again, I'll try not to interrupt you. And from time to time, when you'll give our audience time to think, perhaps, I might read a question or two from Q&A. Yeah. And now it's all yours. You may proceed with all your chess wisdom.
Okay, so the topic I've selected is defending tough positions. And I kind of started to think later what I should pick exactly. Should I pick positions where you're defending for a long time? Or should I pick positions which are difficult to play? Not the same thing always. But then I thought we'll get a mixture of examples. I must admit, I found more examples in endgames. I mean, middle games tend to be thunder and lightning, and then something happens. Endgames are the sort where defending tough positions. Nonetheless, before we go off into the endgames, I want to show you one game that was very interesting in the way Topolov posed problems for me and how I defended, in the end unsuccessfully, but I think there's a lot to enjoy that. So with that preamble, I will start the session. So this was played in Sofia 2005. And this, maybe Jania remembers this. This used to be theory. All of us used to study it and play it, and now it's basically disappeared almost. Yeah, but who knows? In the future, it may pop back.
That's a separate question. Why those very, very fashionable lines, they come and leave, and maybe you guys at the very top, you know the exact reason. But even like for me, and I consider myself like 26 plus grandmaster, sometimes you look at the line, no problem whatsoever, and then the big guys, they stop playing it for some reason, and it turns out that just I don't know, the fashion passed and now something else appeared. Yeah,
exactly. So I remember this game and I picked it, and then I suddenly had this wave of nostalgia, because once upon a time I used to spend so much time studying this position, and now I've even forgotten it exists. Anyway, bishop a6, b3. Nowadays, you could play d5 or whatever, but in those days, we were still following this. White plays knight c3, c6, e4, d5, queen c2. So I did what should be done, d4, knight e4. Early question, let's not spend a lot of time here, but just to get a flavor of this, to get you a bit warmed up, what would you play here as black? Can you give me some quick answers in the chat and I'll move on?
Castle is very popular, knight b to d7 and c5. I can see 3 moves.
So after knight e7, and this was even played in a rapid game between Topalov and Leko. So maybe it was a bit naive of me to just repeat that. But nonetheless, what I did wasn't bad. There are, however, some unusual moves that have to be taken into account. C5 these days is considered more or less sufficient. And if dc5, you can even start with bishop b7. And it's just a decent position for black. But I went bishop b7. And now my opponent did something quite unexpected. I think in the earlier game, he went bishop d3 and trundled along. But against me, suddenly he went knight g5. So how many of you recognize this idea from the Caro-Kann? If I won't stop here, but if later on you guys want to refresh that, you can do that. In the Caro-Kann, this knight g5 idea is quite topical, and it's interesting that it also works because there's a pawn on c6, and something in the structural relationship. Essential idea, if you provoke white, he's going to sacrifice. You take, and then queen g6 check. But sometimes, as they say, the threat is stronger than the execution. And you can, instead of giving queen g6 check, you could do that. And if castles, then bishop at e6 check and knight e5 is coming, going to g6. It's going to break down. Basically this line. And now it's over. And so after bishop h3, you can interpolate this move. And then this. And now this is quite unpleasant for black. You can go queen g6 check. And it's quite a strong attack. I mean, sometimes I can be naive, but this is a bit too naive. If your opponent goes knight g5, and this was a classical game where you probably prepared the whole morning, and you don't just play h6. So it is really unlikely unless you've checked it yourself. I went c5. He just went d5 here. This was unexpected for me. And so I remember that you had the feeling at the board that you have dropped yourself into something that you're not ready for, and you have to cope with this maelstrom which is going to hit you. And it's unfortunate that your opponent probably is waiting exactly for this. So he went ed5, and just a very simple move. Normally we have these dramatic moves, knight e5 or something else, but in fact his idea is very simple. So watch this c pawn here on c5. That one. It's actually getting in the way a bit for black because black doesn't have an open c5. And what white has done is to clear the c4 square. And this will be useful in some lines. We'll see them as we go along. So cd5. I went h6, which in a way is obvious. Of course, the argument I made about not walking into your opponent's preparation still applied, but by this point I could not see what he could do against this. And at some point, the thing is, in such a position, all the moves look unpleasant because you don't know where the blow is going to come, and you feel that you start seeing sharp ideas for your opponent, and it takes a lot of energy because on each move you start calculating a lot. And you get a bit tired. So I was also keen to make a move, cut my energy consumption, and then save up energy when the actual battle starts. So I didn't want to sit here for too long. I mean, the kind of lines I was seeing was something like this: castles. I castle long. He goes. I go h6. And if you want to take a minute here and think what you would do with white, sorry. Let's see if there's something in the Q&A on the chat.
Yeah, well, not that much in a Q&A, but there was a request. I don't know if it will be comfortable for you, Vish, if you flip the board, because I presume people want to see it from your side since you were playing black. But now that we have presented a question for white, maybe let's leave it as is.
What would you fear from the black side? Essentially, that is the question.
Yeah, that's interesting, because now we see, I mean, as I see in the chat, like one move is what they say spammed in the chat, like everyone is afraid of only one move. Interestingly, that's not the move I'd be afraid the most. I don't know if it's a good sign for them or bad sign for them, but it's not the move I'd be afraid the most.
What are they playing?
H4 is very popular to protect the knight, and I understand, like black cannot really take on g5, but that's chess, not checkers, so you're not really forced to take on g5, right?
Yeah, so h4 is the best. However, at the board, and always you should think, you've been hit with a novelty, your opponent looks comfortable, he looks eager to think, and then every move you don't trust yourself almost. I also was worried about this.
That was my move that I was kind of most afraid of. I thought, okay, if I'm not lost after bishop c3, then maybe the position is playable.
Yes. So let's try a line, hg5. Can you spend a few minutes here and think, because it'll improve your attacking skills. What would you play as white? There's a bishop on c3, threatening the defender on f6. Knight g5 comes to mind, obviously.
Yeah.
Can you see any other move?
Yeah, d6 is obviously mentioned, even though I don't really know if it works or not. d6 and knight g5, so two opinions, two versions. h4 is one of the...
Awesome. That was the other move that I was looking for. In fact, knight g5, white can defend with the knight b7. It might interest you to know, well, let's have a little fun. You can play g6. And what would you play here for white?
Okay, chat. I believe we are playing the immortal game with white, so let's find something. There is a very nice suggestion, sir, that I think I might be recommending as well. To go d6 and then bishop c4, doesn't matter what happens. Like bishop h1, we go bishop c4, bishop d6, we go bishop c4.
That's absolutely right. So d6, bishop h1, bishop c4. Now, how would you defend as black?
Mm-hmm. So this is, I believe, the best masterclass ever, because you guys have to think. I mean, that's exactly how the game works. You think for yourself and for your opponent. I mean, not like looking all the time at one side's resources. Like here we are winning, and here we are winning as well. No, that's not the thought process during the game. So
also, I hope it gives you a sense of what you face as black, because as black, what I was facing is not only the correct variations, but the wrong ones that I didn't know were wrong. So there's you have multiple problems. So anyway, can you see some resources for black?
Okay, king g7 is what people say. Knight d5, bishop d5.
Very good. King g7, I guess bishop f7 should win, because there is a knight e6 following as well. Knight d5, knight takes f7 is very strong. What about bishop d5? Think Danny Dubov. That's a big clue. If some of you have seen some recent tournaments, that's a big clue. But
because I wasn't sure myself what's the solution, because white's position is very rich, of course. Yeah, but that's a very, very beautiful position. Yeah, it's just that people immediately, apparently we have a lot of chess enthusiasts who are following Dubov, because immediately queen g6 is spammed. I'm afraid it's a little bit too early for an immediate queen g6.
Okay, this move, and then you do queen g6 check.
Then you do Dubov.
Yeah, the Dubov move. Okay, for those of you who didn't catch the reference, this is Dubov Karyakin. But of course, not in this position. And okay, I wanted to share it. That's all. Queen g6 check. Okay, let's just finish the line. Fg6. Bishop takes d5 check. Rook f7. Knight f7. And it turns out your queen has no squares. If you go to e8, then check, and that's mate. Okay, so in fact, this move is playable for black. I mean, white still plays bishop c4. Black tosses that in. And now you have to think eliminating defenders all over the place. So the idea goes d6, b takes c4, d7, rook at g1 first. And this is still very pleasant for white. Because if you go queen d8, then bishop f6, then you can no longer recapture with the knight. Because to stop the mate, because then the rook is facing off against the queen. Okay, some nice variations like that. But h4 might be just as strong. Now the threat of bishop c3, and you don't have to bother. Oh yes, I wanted to make one point. That here, h4 is quite a strong move. As you, after h4, if you play g4, then you get the knight here. But now there's even a pawn able to go h5, h6. So I went h6. Not that I saw all this, but you have the sense. And by the way, remember that in over-the-board chess, people don't look at everything and decide logically and objectively which is the best move. They see stuff, they see other stuff, something works, something doesn't, they're panicking. That's the impact of a strong idea as well. So there's always that element in a bad position that you're not thinking clearly. And this was already a factor for me. And by the way, calculating all these variations, I'm getting tired. So this will something I'll pay a price for later. So knight f7, king f7. Maybe I should promote this line. So he played knight takes f7, king f7. And now simply long castle. One of the things in defending difficult positions is that it's very hard to work out everything yourself. There's pieces flying, there's things happening. And one of the things that helps you is you've seen other similar examples. I mean, once you've seen one person defend a knight off, well, even when pieces are attacking, you see certain ideas. You see rook takes a2 when there is something happening here. You see similar ideas. Now, what do you think? Should I play knight b7 or should I play bishop d6?
Yeah, chat. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not giving you guys a lot of time, which is maybe slightly unfair, but I want to get your gut feeling. What would you play, knight b7 or bishop d6?
Yeah, I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a very good exercise, especially for what you've mentioned, for the gut feeling, because, yeah, to identifying the patterns, because, yeah, I presume if any of us will be given like unlimited time in a relaxed atmosphere, not at the board, right? Probably it's possible to work out what exactly is the move. But imagine yourself at the board, you have to make a decision, and what comes first, yeah. So bishop d6, and I think even there was a mention that to block d5. I think bishop d6 wins over knight bd7 by a huge margin if we look at the voting in the chat. So
bishop d6 is what I played, and more or less the exact same logic Evgeny just mentioned. Mainly, I was so obsessed with stopping d6. But there was another problem. After knight bd7, I could see that d6 might not be very clear because I could take, and I'm getting this counterplay with this bishop. But if the knight moved first, I didn't see what to do. And this is the key. If I had seen this move, then I would have played knight bd7, which is a better move than bishop d6. I played bishop d6. By the way, it's not the end of the world yet. But positions don't go from equal to bad in one move. They go from two good moves and a few inaccuracies you can choose from to one good move and a couple of inaccuracies you can choose from. Suddenly, now you have to make 3 only moves, and then you're out of luck.
Yeah.
And this is a different train of thought than when you're using a computer to analyze. So when you have a computer in front of you, it doesn't see the difference between I have to make 10 only moves, so it doesn't think of a move as an inaccuracy if it forces you to make 10 only moves afterwards, because it will make these 10 only moves. But for a human, that's a very different vibe. So knight h4 is unpleasant because the idea of d6 is still there. But now if I play bishop d6, that seems rather illogical. Even though it's not the end of the world again, I could have seen that. But then he gets bishop h3. And if I go something like this, then he'll get this over and try to swing all these. But here's the thing. After knight bd7, knight h4, there is a very clever resource. If I had seen it in a similar position before, if I had seen some legendary game with it, I would probably have remembered the idea. But as it was, I couldn't find the move, and I therefore rejected knight bd7. Let's see if you guys can see it. It's, by the way, the already I think it's the best. It's simply the only move in the position. Okay, bishop d6, bishop h3 is slightly debatable, but it's quite unpleasant. If you like, we can spend a minute there. Something like this. Yeah, rook he1 is almost winning, it says. So you see the theme. Bishop c is going to come. The rooks are there. There's a queen g6 check. It's quite bad. What is the move I had missed?
There are mentions for knight to e5, knight to f8. I guess rook f8 gets featured, but I'm afraid rook f8, guys, you're losing after check and knight f5.
Mm-hmm.
At least it seems so. It's knight f8 or knight e5, only 2 moves.
Right. Knight f8 actually loses to d6, if I remember correctly.
And it feels wrong, right? I mean, knight f8, it's not like a revolutionary move, and it's not like, I mean, it's portable and it looks wrong.
But there is one clever line in this, which is that if you go bishop h1, you have to do that. And now you have to play this move, because you kind of need to block that bishop so that bishop c4 check now becomes unbelievably strong. So the move that never occurred to me at this stage is a very computerish move, c4. I mean, Evgeny's reaction is not far from mine. But if bishop c4, then I do that. I don't give you a minute to breathe. Then I do that. And when you go back, I play knight e5 and I take it. So if you take that pawn, you never get that bishop back. If you take with the pawn, then rook e8 apparently is okay, because there's no longer this stuff happening. And also bishop a3 check sometimes will clear some squares. So remember that pawn on c5 was blocking me. It was not blocking white, because white wants to go to c4. But this was a nice move to have seen. And really, knight bd7, you need to have seen c4. Bishop d6 is a more natural move, exactly the logic that you make. But now Topalov played a fantastic move, knight h4. Once again, knight bd7 we've already seen. c4 is apparently still playable. I don't know how seriously I should take c4. And bishop c4, bishop a6, that was the point. But white has full compensation, because he will play rook he1, rook e6, so something like this. I go here, he will take here. Now he'll play rook he1 to rook e6. So I'll just draw that for you. The queen is coming here, bishop is coming here. What the computer says doesn't matter that much. The visual impact is sometimes very hard to deal with. So I came up with a much more sensible move, and I thought actually here my danger was receding. After bishop c8, I felt, well, he'll get a check, he'll get this, he'll get that. But if I exchange the bishop on c8 with a knight on h4, even if he puts a rook on e6, I'll have my dark squares and I'll sit, it'll be passive. Probably even white has compensation, but I have a game. But then Topalov did something really unexpected. And not that I'm not saying he cannot find such a move at the board, but I suspect that because he played it I called reasonably fast. He had seen a similar idea in the morning. And that's again the difference between a prepared person and a thing. If I had seen C4 somewhere, even in a different position, it might occur to me here. Hopefully in the future, you guys will face a position like this and you'll remember C4, at least to check if it works. I don't know. So after bishop C8, he went rook E1, which is a fascinating move. Knight D5 is hard now because my bishop is no longer defending that knight. So bishop C4 is obviously stronger. And therefore, he now wants to put his rook on E6. If I take, then my king is unbelievably weak on the light squares. And if I don't take, well, that rook just sits on E6.
Yeah, that's very annoying typically.
Yes.
Rook on E6 next to the king.
By the way, modern computers say bishop C4 is very strong. And they even want to play rook H1, bishop C4 here. They want to go rook H1. Doesn't matter. Let's look at its line. So rook E1. Now, I could have gone here. And if rook E6, I can walk away. And this shouldn't be so crazy. But white can just continue like that. And there is still an initiative. He's now threatening bishop takes h6, but also knight f5, attacking two things. And it's amazing how helpless black is after this, because now you understand the power of the light squares. You know, it's bishop c4, knight f5, bishop h6. There is just too much action. Rook e1, I still felt he can't put his knight on f5, so let me get that move out. I'll promote it. And whatever I promote is what actually happened in the game, okay? Mm-hmm. So I went knight e6. He went rook e6. Again, the computer conjures up some sort of knight c7 line. Knight a6, I went rook e6. He went rook e6. And I could go knight c7, then he goes, I forget, bishop c3 or bishop c4. Check on this. Just bishop c4. And it's very hard to understand that the best move is now this, because you want to walk away from that check. You would think you would defend yourself better with the rook on this side, but the rook needs to support h6 apparently. And this already means, even when you study this afterwards, unless you can find this yourself at the board, it's kind of meaningless. In fact, even if my second told me about this position and so on, for me, it's already a bit disorienting because this is too much for us. So I played the more natural move. I played knight b4, whereupon he took. I took, and bishop c4. So we're already at move 20, and I've been thinking non-stop for maybe an hour already, hour and 15 minutes. You feel under pressure. And you have the feeling that you have solved nothing. You played bishop c8, you played knight a6, b4, but white still has resources. It turns out black can still do that. Hard to believe. But after knight f5, the line is b5. And then if rook d6, you're supposed to go here. This is slightly inhuman, or maybe not slightly. And I couldn't find it. So I came up with the correct half the plan. I played b5. He went bishop b5. And then I went bishop e7, thinking now I will take on. So what I wanted to avoid was this, that he throws this in and then checks. So I played bishop e7, thinking I'm now threatening bishop into thing. And for the moment, again, I couldn't see that I'm lost. Funnily enough, I saw this idea, queen g6 check. I have to go king g8, knight f5, bishop f8. But now because that bishop is no longer on that diagonal, I buy a little time. You would think bishop c4 is still very strong. Yes, it also wins. So I don't know why what I was saying and what Topalov was, what made him reject this. So this also wins for exactly the reason I described. Rook takes f6. Maybe what I'm getting confused is that at the board, I saw this idea and I thought it's not so dangerous. And then later on, I was worrying about this. But he came up with another way, which turned out to be good enough. He went knight g6. I took. He took. I took. He went check. King had to come out. Knight takes h8. But now my problem is he wants to go queen b2 check. and it's the most powerful fianchetto bishop you can imagine. So I went queen d4, and now he gains time. He goes rook d1, queen a1 check, king d2, queen d4 check, king e1, queen e5 check. He goes here. I take, he takes. I came up with, the main problem is rook d6 is such a strong move. So I played knight d5, and after knight f7, I thought, sometimes you have this feeling that, maybe you've saved it, you've gone to an ending, a pawn down, but maybe you'll have compensation. But try as I might, I could not find a way to save this position. And probably because it isn't there. Knight f7 really clinches it. The rest of the game was quite decent technique on his part, but was not very demanding. So this is one kind of difficult position. I think it just comes down to seeing one or two moves, but always, if I can scroll back, the earliest decisions will be quite interesting. You'll have the option between passive and creative and something else. And the way a game gets difficult is your number of options start getting narrower till they become like a funnel where you can only do one move and survive with the bet. I would say if you get to that situation, you're already in big trouble because chances are you will make a mistake. Today, when I was preparing this material a little bit, a funny idea came up, which is knight d7. And you think, no, wait a minute.
He'll sacrifice something. Yeah, that's what I would say. No, that looks very, very dangerous.
Yes. I mean, first of all, you don't believe this move because of knight a6, bishop e6, sorry, knight g5 check. Knight f7 and knight g5 check, and you can take here. But it seems that this, black and played. More to the point, I would worry about this move because he wants to take with the bishop. But then the computer points out this remarkable resource, knight f8. And if you go knight e5, I take here. And there's a little trick, which is that if you go bishop c3, there is this cheapo. Again, that's the reason everybody is spending so much time on the openings these days, because we don't study openings to get winning positions. We study openings not to start losing one. That's the thing.
Yeah, there was may I add just a little bit, Vishy, because there was a suggestion. So could the complexity of those lines for black just cause this variation to drop out of fashion? So that was a suggestion from one of the attendees. So that
actually no, because even with the computers from 15 years back, this game was played in 2005. Even with the computers from 15 years back, you could go home, maybe leave it for an extra 20 minutes in the position. It would get to sufficient depth. And if it kept saying, no, it's equal, you could just look at the solution. Nothing goes out of thing, but maybe, in fact, maybe this is recently I've seen a couple of games in this position and white has been doing well. So maybe this is the reason. I mean, the line these days goes something like this. Knight c6. Now this move, well, there's a little trick in the position. I think maybe, it's not decisive, or is it? It may not be, bishop d6, bishop d7. Then. Yeah, maybe that's not dangerous enough because I think this is what they do these days. And then after knight a5, they play rook c1. And computers keep moving along. It's not that this line has disappeared 100%. It's just, you see it very rarely. In fact, sometimes maybe this can come from Catalan, I don't know. So it doesn't even come from the Queen's Indian. But the Queen's Indian has dropped off the map. It may have more to do with the Petrosian line in the Queen's Indian than this one. But look, that's going to be a separate survey. So let me get back to my theme of the day. But
So I believe we have more examples to come, but just one more little observation, because that's as well that I'm telling my students of a very, very different level. So the fact that computer suggests that it's an equal position, meaning the evaluation is 0, 0, 0, it's not necessarily applicable in a human practice. Because if your opponent has 5 different tries that are interesting, looking promising, and to each of these tries you have to repeat with a series of only moves, in my universe, in human play, it's not an equal position. That's what I'm trying to say, right?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. In fact, what I would say is one of the biggest dangers of following long theoretical lines where white has maybe 3 options, and then each of these 3 options you have to know 5 or 6 details, or maybe even more. And then you're taxing your thing because you don't know which one will come, so you don't know which one to revise. Sometimes in these long lines, people will make one innocent move somewhere, a3 somewhere. You will not be able to take advantage of it, but suddenly you have to check all your lines again. All the lines you memorized, you have to check what difference does a3 make. That is the danger in going for overly theoretical styles. I think it's healthy to keep a balance. You shouldn't avoid theoretical lines and they're good for you. But you should keep a balance where once in a while you may think, well, today I don't want to make it a memory contest. Let me play this other line. And you can play a sharp line if you've never played it before. The worst thing is to play a sharp line that your opponent is sitting there waiting for, that he spent the whole morning. That's maybe what I want to add to what Evgeny said. Now we're going to go to some endgames. Okay, so rook is c1. I can assure you this position is as equal as they come. It is as dead as they come. There is no reason to lose this. The only explanation I can make is that you start off trying to thinking any move works. And just like I pointed out, that's a bad attitude in the middle game. It's a bad attitude here. If you can sit down, force yourself to concentrate, play the best move now, or think of a whole plan. Don't say any move will work and relax and your mind goes away. But sit down and see a whole line and then say, I'm going to follow it till the end. You'll save yourself a lot of work later. So right now it seems like you're overreacting what all moves draw. But 5 moves later, you'll thank me for this advice. So let's remember that a bit. Here is one plan. After rook a c1, and by the way, computers always do this very creatively. This was a nice idea. Bishop b5. And you think, wait, that makes no sense. What about bishop f3? Then the computer wants to go here and exchange rooks and bring the other rook. Very simple, right? But it takes a little effort. It would take me 2-3 minutes to figure that out and so on. A rapid game, you think maybe I shouldn't. Or maybe I was thinking that we were going to agree to draw quickly. But it's worth putting in the effort. Something like this, you can even make a move like king g7 first and then do it on the next move. So all these kinds of ideas work. Nothing wrong with what I did. I took here. He took here. Now I made my second, I still won't call it an inaccuracy, but why not play king g7? Then nothing is going to change it. If he takes, we have one open file each, and we are where we want to be. But I took here, he took here, and then I went rook d8. And this is what I mean by a slippery slope. At every stage, you're narrowing your options, and that's how you get into trouble. He went rook c7. Now, this would not have been a bad way to go about it. He chases. I go here. He chases again. Now I go here. Now, in order to keep chances, he has to play a4. And both b4 work as well as ba, rook e2. These draws, I can actually make in my sleep. So maybe my mistake was underestimating the danger here. He went rook c7, I went rook d2. I thought, what could possibly go wrong here? Rook takes a7, rook takes e2, king f3. And now I went here. So it's not the best square, by the way. I should have gone to c2 because I can play rook c3 check sometimes. You'll see I'll make these little mistakes in defending. So I'll run through this endgame reasonably fast because it isn't actually. I went king g7, he went h4, e5, and he went rook a6. Again, b5 is possible, but already I could see I underestimated the thing. It's not even that I thought I was worse. It's that my rook is stuck there. It can't give a check. I don't see what I can do. Then I saw one resource and I thought, that is an easy draw. Let me go down there. Nothing wrong with my move, but I feel the decision-making process was what cost me the point. This feeling of relaxing. There is one good plan, which I hadn't thought of. It is very creative. h5 takes. And now you have this huge pawn mass waiting. I can play f4, the other pawn to f5. And the h pawns don't actually matter. This might have gotten me a fairly comfortable draw. Nonetheless, what I did wasn't bad. I played king g6. He took. I had to take. He went g5. And by the way, modern computers just say this is a dead draw. King here. Rook f6. king here, rook takes, king here. And I knew it myself. There is nothing difficult here. I go rook b2. He went rook b7, king f5, king e3. I would not, since I felt so confident that this position was a draw, maybe calling it defending tough positions is not. But here, the definition of tough is not the evaluation. It is it trivial to play or can you still go wrong? And if you think about it that way, there are some interesting draws, by the way. Would you believe e4 is a draw? Just fix that pawn. So if he gives a check, then remember this pawn is holding both pawns. And if he tries to collect it with the king, I can even walk away because there are two pawns to defend. But it's not necessary. But what I did next was really unbelievable. I had seen it during the game that I should just go here because I couldn't see anything wrong with keeping the king on d6. But I thought, let me give him a check. And this hasty move. And now it made it worse. He moved here. Still a dead draw, but the rot has started. King d3. Now I saw that rook b2, he annoys me again. So I went rook a2. He went rook c7, which was very annoying for me. Because one still is using that trick. But now if I go king e6, he'll go rook c2. So if I go rook b2, then he can still kick me. But I have to. Because if he goes rook c2, b2, then I'm actually in trouble. If I had relieved my king and put it on e6, none of this would be happening. Because the f2 pawn, his king will never be able to walk away. And by the way, you may ask why I couldn't bring the king here, but then he does the same thing on the d-file, rook b2. I didn't go rook b2, I went king f4. I went king f4. Again, this move doesn't fully make sense. Why not king e4? So already from a position which I should have drawn and gone to the waiting room some time back, I am struggling, still trying to defend this position. Rook f7 is not a threat because now my king can come back to where it was supposed to go in the beginning. And this would have been a bit faster. Anyway, he went king f4. He went rook d2. And maybe I'm going to make this easier by promoting this to the main line. Now I go to the far rook. He goes b4, rook c8 check, king b3. And by the way, Kramnik should be rewarded for his persistence in playing such a dead drawn position. You won't win drawn positions unless you try. So I had seen that instead of king b3, if he goes king d3, I had calculated this line. Rook b2. Now the rook is behind the pass pawn. You think this is game over. e4 check, king d4. Rook d8 check. And I had calculated that I should keep checking it all the way to this square and then go here or g8. And after this, it's a draw. Because if he goes b6, then I play e3 using the pin. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't do that, I capture an f2 and we both queen at the same time. But it's still a bit superficial to only consider one move. I thought, well, what progress is he making here? So I went back to b8. And I thought, okay, now I've nailed the draw. Once again, my king on f4 came back to haunt me. If my king had been on e4, I would have rook f8 here. But with the king on f4, I am still one move away. But luckily, now I found king e4. He went back to d2. And I even gained a tempo. And then I went e4. He went rook b2, which he could have done here. But it wouldn't have made a big difference because my king was already on f4, so it will transpose. I went e4, and maybe I was unlucky even that this position turns out to be winning because the line with which it's winning is simply unbelievable.
I'm wondering what the line is because I've recently was reminded of a game in somewhat similar scenarios. So well, let's finish with this game, and maybe I will suggest for the chat to check. I mean, if you're interested, you can check one more game with like 2 pawns versus 1 and some really study-like wins.
Yeah, I'm sure this one could be a composition as well. But it's hard to understand this, but rook a2 is a mistake, what Kramnik did. Because the line is a bit inhuman. And now I went rook h8 because this is not the point where I lost the game. It is, but if your survival depends on rook f8, then it's already late. Uh, all the mistakes, all the easy draws earlier, that's how I got into the situation. If you go rook h8, then I'll just show you the line b5. Now works. After rook h2, he goes b6. And this is what I thought. I thought I have rook h6, but he has rook a6. But here's the beauty. This is the wrong plan anyway, because after rook a2, I can play rook f8. Sorry, I shouldn't have overwritten that, but I should play rook f8. And then it's pretty spectacular. If you play b5, I go king g2. If b6, I can switch with rook b8 now. And so you cannot do that. And if rook e2, then I have this move. And now I'm going to go king f1, forcing him to choose, and I win the pawn back. Isn't that a majestic line?
Yeah, the rook, which is supposedly has to fight with b5 pawn, all of a sudden, well, it's multitasking. It protects the e4 pawn, and it also attacks the f2 pawn.
Yes. But so why is rook c2 winning and not rook a2? Okay. So now if I go, I'll just get you the line 1 second because it's really beautiful. Rook c2. If rook f8, now you go rook a2. This is where I ended up with Vladi. Oh. And the difference is if you go king g2, I go rook e2. You go rook f4. I go king c3. And if you go here, then this wins.
That's too complex.
Yes, you can't do this kind of stuff unless you're in some other world. But can you believe that this is mutual Zugzwang? Because that's what it is. That is what is unbelievable about it. He started with rook a2, and now this move draws. Because, well, you may ask, well, what happens after rook e2, rook f4? King c3. Why is this not winning now? I say king f1, you say rook e3. I do here, and you say now this wins. But now your pawn is on b5, so I get rook f5 draw. And that's the line. So it's amazing that this move wins rook c2 for this reason, that you, in the end, and the difference is what I did is what is supposed to happen in the other line, except my rook on f8 is running out of squares. So rook a2, so the difference would be rook c2, rook f8, rook a2. I don't have a move with my rook. But after this, he is in fact winning because he went b5. And now it's lost because I no longer have all this rook f8, rook f4 lines. Now white is one pawn further. He can play rook b2 and b6. So I went rook h2, he went b6, rook h6. And this move is why it needed to happen with rook on c2. So rook c2, rook f8 was mutual Zugzwang. And king. So I'm slightly unlucky in defending this tough endgame, because it turns out that this is a subtlety neither of us saw, nor could you reasonably expect to see. But nonetheless, I want to again repeat, you lose difficult positions because of the slippery slope. You start with one small mistake, then one small mistake, then life gets progressively worse. You don't lose because of the one big blunder normally. And every inaccuracy, your computer may tell you it's still equal, but you're making life harder for yourself. That's why you lose. I think we have time for one more ending.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do a Q&A.
We were supposed to, but just a tiny bit once again to add to this. When you allowed him king d3 and blundered on f2, like you cannot take on f2 this moment, could you please, but once again, maybe bring this position up? Because I thought, okay, I mean, on a different level, but once again, that's how, when Vishy was describing how do you lose because you think like everything draws, right? And then that's a very familiar feeling. And then you blunder something like this, and then all of a sudden you understand, I cannot take on f2. And it's, okay, in my case, it would be a bit of a panic because I was just thinking, okay, the f2 is always hanging. I have no problem whatsoever. All of a sudden, I have to, instead of playing the drawish position, I have to kind of solve the study how to draw this particular line with only moves. Yeah, so that's a very, very dangerous transition, of course. Yeah.
I mean, if I had said pass and he played king d3, at least I would have been able to play king a6. But this move is so spectacularly bad, and it's carelessness, because I have blundered from a drawn position to a drawn position by a study mechanism. And that is the biggest drop. And so again, defending tough positions, this is something you must avoid.
Yeah.
Let's do 10 minutes of questions, and then I'll quickly show you my game with the Ivanchik because it was very pretty. And I think there I successfully defended. I've shown you 2 losses now. So far, teaching you how to defend tough positions, I've shown that by showing you how not to. But I'd like to show you at least one game where I got it right.
No,
and even there, it was not completely right. But okay.
We do believe you're qualified to teach us. I mean, there is no question about it.
All right, let's hear your questions.
Yeah, so the questions, I mean, I believe there will be too many immediately. Well, a very popular question, how to learn an opening with no specifications. Like, do we need to have a strong memory? Okay, very tempting answer is yes.
Yes, you will need a memory, but there's all kinds of memory. There's a memory where you simply remember a long line. That memory is like remembering a sentence in a foreign language without understanding what it means.
Brilliant.
Now, that memory works sometimes. You can memorize, you can look at your phone and read out the translation. And then maybe one day later, you still remember the words and you say it. But this works in very short sentences. And if the opponent does something unexpected, you don't know, can you use the same word or not? Very similar. I think memory is contextual. If you learn a word, learn its meaning, then you learn when you can use it, in what context. You learn some expressions with that. You hear other people do it, and then even you can use the word in different contexts. So you may, for instance, English may be a foreign language to you, but if you know an expression, you understand why it works, then you're able to use it in various situations. In chess, the same. How do you learn a new opening? By playing some games with it. You play it 100 times. That's like going on the street and talking to 10 people in a language you don't know. You become more comfortable. At some level, you understand. And I hope the analogy was but that's really how it feels. So there is, if you play an opening 100 times, you'll be better off. Even if you play bad moves, at least you know what plan you're following. There's no use making good moves without having any idea why it was good. And that's the difference. So nowadays, it's impossible to avoid memory issues because of computers. But even a computer's answer should make sense at some level.
Yeah, that's a very, very nice answer. And then, once again, I really like the analogy. And as well, nowadays you have such a massive of information, so that if you, because I say in my days, like when I was a kid and studying openings, you would open a page or two in encyclopedia, and that would be your own. I mean, pretty much all knowledge, all you have to know about the line, right? That you just go and play. And nowadays, if you want to learn everything, you'll never play a game with the opening, because by the time you've memorized what's out, there will be new analysis, new games, and so on and so on. Yes, it's just okay. And on the other hand, you have perfect opportunity to play online, and just play. Just how to judge whenever position is tough or not. Okay, that's not a real question, perhaps. So the question on what to do. What part of the game to work more, opening or endgame? I
think working on endgames is always useful, but it's not a case of either or. You will need some middle games, you will need some openings, and you'll need some endgames. But as you study different parts of the games, at some level, your brain is connecting dots, and they all start to make sense. For instance, an opening line may depend on, the verdict may depend on you knowing what to do in the end game that results. Once again, I emphasize it is better to play a game, have 10 questions, and then look for the answer than to start studying with a book. Because if you start studying with a book or a computer, you're getting the answers, but you don't know to what questions. And if you play a game, and then the question is, at that point, I didn't know whether I could do this or that. Let me now see what the correct answer was. And knowing the question to the answer you get is as important as getting an answer. That's,
can't really put it in a better wording. Well, a more of a general question. There are quite a few young Indian players becoming better and better at the moment. So why is that? And how would you rate young European like Vincent Keimer, for example, compared to Indian talents? So I don't know. They're probably of the same age. If I'm thinking of what was, and I'm confusing now. Yeah, so Vincent Keimer, you probably know, right, from Germany.
Sure.
The player, I believe, Peter Lecko is working with, and the Indian kids, and you probably know many more than I do. So I know Nihal Sarin and Pragananda, these guys, but there is Gukesh, right? But there is more and more, I believe.
Look, they're all pretty good. They're all very hardworking. And it's difficult to single out someone. Some of them are very good in blitz. Some of them are very good in classicals. But they're all growing fast. Maybe you could say that Firusha has pulled ahead a little bit. So I would place him ahead of many others. I mean, he's competing with people who are at least 3 to 4 years ahead of him. I mean, older than him. And the next wave, there's a big group of very talented youngsters. Still, some of them in their teens. And India has a good bunch of them. So we have at least 5 or 6 grandmasters, all roughly at this age of about between 14 and 16, maybe 17. If you spread that to 19, then you get 1 or 2 more. And they're all very young and talented. But the scenario changes so fast, it's very difficult to compare them. I think it's a question of how they make progress now, because, how do you separate yourself from the others? How do you break through? That's the key. But they're all quite strong.
Do we still have, we do have 10 minutes or so left, so maybe let's go with your Ivanchuk example then, right?
Oh, it's manageable. I mean, I can make it a bit shorter, but it's good fun.
Meanwhile, there is a question popped up. Is ChessBase worth the money for specific rating was mentioned, like 1600, 1700, something like that? What do you think? I think ChessBase is kind of professional equipment, but nowadays it's so many things online that perhaps if you don't feel, I'm sorry to answer this question instead of Vishy. Maybe you have like some specific opinion. I think it's like it's good to have ChessBase, but if you cannot afford it or doubt that it's like value, I think you can find a lot of stuff online.
Yes, again, this scenario is changing very fast. But if you want to analyze with databases and study the game, then yes, ChessBase. Yeah, you need some version of ChessBase or the other. At least you can use the free online alternatives, and you can construct a lot and remain at PGM. You'll have to put in some effort to master it. In ChessBase, it feels effortless, but it could equally be because I'm so used to it. It may not be because it's the only way. Maybe my learning curve disappeared because I was using it for so long. I didn't need it. I can't answer that what it's worth for you. But, ChessBase is a good product. But nowadays, there are so many intelligent ways to learn that maybe you just want to get onto an online site and start playing a lot. And then you can study courses this way, that way. There are new things happening, which, by the way, ChessBase also has, blah, blah. Okay. So this is my game with Ivanchuk. Due to the limited time, I will go slightly fast. Ivanchuk played Rook A7 here. Rook E1 is a very good move, and I'm still in some trouble. I fell for this bluff and I went G5. In fact, after Rook E3, what I didn't see is Rook C7. I didn't see how to give a perpetual because his king comes to H4. And this was move 32. I cannot believe I was in deep time trouble. So I should have been able to find king at 7, rook check, king at 6, and this is a draw.
Yeah, because now H4, of course, you have the perpetual.
And when you exchange the rooks so that I don't get a perpetual, now I take this pawn, and now your pawns are too broken up. So I will escape. So first exchange of mistakes is already happening. And now Ivanchuk went here because he thought he had blundered. In fact, I have gained G5 in all this, but I did what I had to do. Rook takes B3. He now went Rook F1 typical Ivanchuk. His thing is give back the pawn, but simplify the position. And, Vasya is really a technical genius. Both Vasily and Shirov, Alexei, have played some amazing endgames. But in this case, I was able to pull this one out. So I realized that I could not compete with multiple pawns. I could not play rook f4, so I went here. He took. I took. He went a5. I was rook takes d4, h3. Now the question is, why didn't I take this pawn? So I should have just gone here. Problem is a6, rook e2, and not rook a8 check, because I still have the pawn on g7. But rook b7, and now my king is too slow. It's stuck on g8. So I had to play king g8 just to run away. He now goes a6. Now it's too late. I cannot ever attack that pawn. So I went rook a4. He went king f2. Rook a5. King f3. Rook e5. And now I have won a pawn. But he has won the ability to keep his rook on the 7th instead of in front of his pawn. In fact, he went rook e7. Then I thought, at least let me get here. He went rook e8, now threatening a7. So I have no choice. And I took. So I gave check. King e4. At least here I was thinking clearly to some degree, because I hated the move I was going to do next. But in a sense, if you understand that the king is slowly coming to the queen side, you look for a while and you cannot see any way to stop it, then you have to break the pawns on the other side. So even though I didn't like what I was going to do, I saw that I had to do it. So, but this is at least clear thinking. By the way, here king f5 wins because it will simplify a lot of his issues. But understandably, that felt to him like a distraction. He went king d5. It looks totally won. But if you can find my next move, unfortunately, I can only give you very little time. So let me just say that the next move is just a fantastic move. And I saw it because I was looking for it. And I had come up with some clever plan. I found this move.
Yeah. So interestingly, that's one of the few of your questions that I was able to answer.
Right. So you cut off the king. And so the question is, what difference does it make if you go rook c6? Then I go here. If he goes rook c4 to protect the pawn, I attack this. The only way to defend is here. I go here, and there's nothing to be done.
Yeah, and of course, a7, perhaps we have to mention, so what happens in case of a7, right?
Well, this was my big achievement in this game, is that and Ivanchuk saw this after a very long time. Because he suddenly couldn't realize what the hell I was aiming for. But I'm going to go here. I'm going to stalemate myself, and then I'm going to take on a7. So defending these positions, defending tough positions is also a question of sitting and working and finding hidden resources. You can get better at it by training. You can get better at it by seeing practical examples. I don't think I came up with this idea from scratch. It's just suddenly the idea pops in my head. And it's because I've seen something similar somewhere before. Okay, so rook c3. Now he suddenly had a problem, which is what he should do. So he went rook b6. And now I blundered because I was so obsessed with getting my g6 move in that I forgot that the scenario was going to change. The way to hold is to keep waiting with rook c2. I mean, just nothing to be done, but it's hard to make progress here. But maybe that was too much to hope for, that if I go rook c2, that it seems that white cannot make progress. I'm not 100% sure, but he went rook b6. So I'll just promote this line. So you have this as the main line. And I went g6 because I thought, let me make my fortress here and then I'm safe. But this loses. The whole line has to be done this way. Sorry, that's why I was getting confused. I couldn't find that. So I went here, went here. Sorry, he went again. I'm wasting time. Should go here.
Oh, okay. So the king is on h7. So this works.
Yes. Rook a6, rook a8, king b6, g4, king b7. I think that's the line. So a7, rook e8. It's a trickier endgame than that because I can also winning because of the g4. You just go king b7. And when you take, it's very important not to take with the king because your king is one square further away, but to take with the rook. And then the king comes back in time. Slightly long variation, but that is the gist of it. And by the way, it doesn't matter if when you're in a lost position, you're defending a bad position. It doesn't matter. You can your job is to pose as many problems as possible, not to do the impossible, which is to save a lost position. But you can pose the matters pretty well. I think the difference is here in the line where I don't play g6. Where I wait, he can do the same thing again, which is rook c6, rook g2. And I think the difference is at some point, my king can come out via g6 to f5. Whereas with the pawn on g6, my king's natural route is blocked. That will take us slightly far afield. The only thing to say is he played king d6, king h6. Yeah, he went king d6 and I went king h6. And now I don't believe it's a win anymore. He went rook b8. So I went rook a3. And now Vasya thought, fine, the king is also active. So now after g4, later on when I capture the pawn and run, the king is already well placed to think. So he thought, now let me go here, put the king back, and then try to save it. But now when there's a rook on a8, the king should not be sitting on g7. So I brought it back. And in fact, this is already a draw because he can't win this anymore. He went king c6, c5. I went here. Went here. King a7, rook b4. And rook b8, rook takes g4. Rook b5, rook a4. Rook takes g5. And the simplest draw, and always the simplest is best, is rook b. And now in the time it takes him to come back, I will push my g pawn, my king will advance. So basically, I drew this game for two reasons. I found this move, and I found this plan of stalemate. And it confused Vasily just enough that I was able to hold what otherwise seems like an almost impossible endgame. Because actually, black has no strengths, no trumps in this position. His pawns are doubled, they're blocked, and the king is also stuck on h7. No counterplay. So, but sometimes this unexpected resource like rook c3 that you find can save the game. So this is an example where I actually got it right. And
Yeah, so I'm trying to sum it up, right? So try to avoid, even if it looks like a easy draw, try to avoid this attitude. That's, I mean, the worst attitude is what I had, like during some of this drawing end games. I would think, what else could I do so it's still a draw? You know, not even like thinking about the move. Okay, you know, like I can make this suspicious move, and it still will be a draw. That's terrible. And here, as Vishy says, that might be a lost position, but you don't really care. You look for the best chance. You look for the practical decision, for practical chances, right? And then you spot the stalemate idea. Then you find the precise moves like rook c3, and yeah, save very important half point. All right, so thanks everyone for the participation. We all thank you, Vishy. That was very, very insightful. I don't know if it was too complex for someone, but I think this will be later on assembled in the file, the video, so that you guys can rewatch, and the PGN file, or I don't know, the text file, that you can go through these games once again, and maybe we'll find some details that might have been missed. Thanks very much. and see you next time, everyone. Hopefully you'll join our next masterclasses.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed these examples. I tried to show that defending tough positions is often a question of psychology. It's often lost in your head or drawn in your head. But I hope you enjoyed the class, and stay strong and keep practicing.